Okay, we are back with the F330 frame, and what I have decided to do is transfer my CX20 onto the 330 frame as an experiment. What I need to do is to completely disassemble this. Now the reason I want to move the CX20's innards onto the 330 is because of weight. The 450 frame is very nice, but it is very heavy, and the little 330 frame is quite a bit lighter. So yes, that's where we are. Let me first take this thing apart because there's quite a bit of desoldering and things that I need to do, and when I am ready to put the motors and things onto the 330, I'll get back to you. Right guys, we are back with the CX20 rebuild onto the 330 frame. I must say this frame is absolutely tiny. Now in my case, I decided I am going to stick with the original power distribution board, as it already has its alarm in, it has its power to the receiver and the APM. But getting this mounted is a little tricky, since the only place to mount it is on top. That gives you very little clearance for things like your props. Now, I'm just showing this as an example. I'm probably not going to be using these props. I'm going to be using the original props. Let me just get one to show you the difference. Here actually I have a pack of the original props. Now these are my very original props. Now, you can see there's a huge difference in size. The original props are actually, I think they're 8-inch. I'm not quite sure, but irrespective, these 9443 props are way too big. Now you'll see that even with these, let's just put a motor in that area of approximately where it's going to be mounted. Now if you take this prop and you pop it on there, just get it seated, and we can actually get a fair idea of where this is going to be. Look at that clearance. I'll just get this thing centered on the spot so I can use it. There's very little clearance if I do mount it there. So I have to be careful that no wires, etc. are going to be sticking out. I'll have to properly stick them down, tape them down, etc. as to not get into the way of the props. If I do decide to use the self-tightening props, which you might be able to. Okay, that's not something to screw on. There we go. Then you'll see that clearances are ridiculous. It becomes virtual. It is impossible. Look at that. So it's just not going to work with these. But in the end, this is the whole idea of rebuilding it onto this is I want a fun flyer. So I'm not going to be doing any kind of serious work or photography or etc. with this. And considering that as well, I doubt I'm even going to put on the GPS receiver again. I don't need it. This is going to be my... Actually, I have not used the GPS receiver since I moved it to the 450. I think I used it once or twice, but even on the 450 it was my fun flyer. So GPS I don't need. I'm going to see if I can just build it and not use the GPS receiver at all anyway, because it is, to me, it's a toy. Now for others who are considering doing any kind of serious work, stay away from the 330 frame. It's just too small, but it is nice and light. Anyway, let's go ahead. What I'm going to do is I have a little piece of paper here. You might have seen this lying here and wondering what is it about. I'm going to use this as a marker that way, and the corners I'm going to be drilling holes. I'm going to center this as much as possible, and then at those corners I'm going to be drilling holes. Now this center part of this plate is safe to drill. There's no electronic parts, etc. through there. I have checked it on both sides. The size of this piece of paper, and the reason I'm using this piece of paper, let me just give you the size of the piece of paper if you want to make a note. This way is 1 1/4 inch, or for those working in millimeters, it is 3.1 or 3.2 centimeters, but 1 1/4 inch. This way around, it's 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Right, now that I'm going to use to measure out as a little template. Once I get my center point here, I'm going to stick it on the center there, and I'm going to be drilling 3mm holes using a 3mm drill bit. And I will be using the same piece of paper as my marking template. Yeah. Get it centered there, and I'm going to be drilling those same 3mm holes into this plate, the top plate, once I have it nice and centered. And once I have all those holes, I'm going to be using these little standoffs. Those ones, which are going to be screwed under that little plastic nut. It's all plastic, and the top part is going to get that, which turns in there, and that's all going to keep it down. These stuff are surprisingly strong, so yeah, it'll suffice. I bought them in a little box like this. I think I actually got these from Banggood sometime. Just look around for them. I think they're just called standoffs, plastic standoffs, and yeah, it's nice to have a little thing packed like this around. Anyway, let me get ahead and drill the holes. Now, once I have this whole thing mounted, this, by the way, is the front. This side of the CX20 board is the front, the receiver side, and this is the back. And I want my red arms at the back, but it's up to you if you do decide to change it around the other way around. Now, once I have this down here, then we'll see if there's enough space for me to squeeze the receiver under it, which I think there may actually be. And that's where the receiver, so there'll be more than enough space for any kind of battery I choose to put at the bottom, which will then also lower the center of gravity slightly and perhaps make it a little more stable and fun to fly. But yeah, let's get ahead and do that first before we start and try to mount anything else. Alright, the holes have been drilled, and I've done a bit of a cleanup so that all the dust and things are away and the thing just looks better. There's still some dust. I just marked the center, found the center here, placed it there, and marked the spots for the holes. And yeah, we have them. And I did the same. I got the center of the board by just crossing it. Did the same with the paper, and I've got my 4 little holes there. Next step, we're going to put in these little standoffs, and they're actually quite simple. Keep a little nut at the back. I can just get it in there, and we turn this one in from the side. Right, I'm going to do those, and I'll get back to you. And there we go. I have all 4 the standoffs now mounted, and obviously these are plastic into plastic, so you don't want to tighten them down too much. They are pretty strong, so they're not going to break off very easily, and it's there just to keep it down. Obviously check all little bolts and nuts every now and again. You don't want these things coming loose. Right, with our board now ready, I'm just going to clean up these holes with my finger a little bit. You may have noticed I mounted my compass up here. on top of the flight controller. I couldn't find another place to mount it. It doesn't actually matter exactly where the compass is. If it's calibrated for where it is, it just works. There may be other arguments, but I found it works great no matter where it is, as long as you have calibrated it for where it is. Okay, now all we do is we put down our board on top of those little, and now we have a little gap, and we may actually even be able to fit our receiver into that. Now, your receiver on this model of the CX20 has two little antenna wires, and I'm going to put one to the back and I'm going to keep the other one to the front, purely because it just gives you a bit of that diversity in signal. Okay, so one's going to go at the front and one at the back. Okay, I'm going to push the receiver in here because as I tighten that down, it's going to hold the receiver between the top plate and the board. And yeah, then you don't really have to do very much else there. Okay, I'm just going to tighten down the board by using these little screws. They're also plastic, but as I said, you don't need very much power to hold this whole thing down. I'm going to do that quick and I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. Okay, we now have our board neatly mounted, and the receiver is stuck in there because when I pull down those two, that little area between there, the board, etc., it just holds onto it, it grips onto it, and it's nice and sturdy. It's not going to go anywhere. Now, next steps are going to be to, I'm not going to be worried about the antenna wires. These are just the LEDs, and we can choose to mount them both next to each other, or one on the one side, one on the other side. It doesn't really matter. But next step is going to be to get the ESCs mounted back on, and the motors, and then take it from there. So yeah, let's see. Okay, all my ESCs have been prepared again. I've just put on, I've soldered on some new wires for the motor side, and extended the wires on the power side slightly with new types of wires, so I can just get them fitted through. I'm just going to be fitting them from the underside and just using cable ties, a little thicker cable ties, shorter cable ties, but a fairly decent type to cable tie them onto the frame. I'll be back once I have all of them cable tied onto the frame. Just while I'm mounting the first ESC here, some of you may have noticed the white LED wire hanging loose, and I'm just going to tuck that in and just keep it one side. That is the LED wire. I'm really not interested in that. I am purposefully not going to connect them up because I'm not interested in the LEDs. I just want a fun little flyer, and so I'm just connecting up power. I'm not interested in the LEDs, and yeah, I'll be back with you once I have mounted all the ESCs like this. Okay, there we go. I have cable tied all the ESCs onto the frame. I have a little open spot here. I don't really care very much about them, but you know, this is going to be my fun fly. If it works, if it doesn't work, I don't care very much, as long as I am having fun doing this, and hopefully it does actually work. So the next thing is I'm going to just rewire all the power leads onto the power distribution board again. I'm not going to bore you with how I do that. It's standard soldering, and once I'm done with that, I'll be back with you again. Alright, now that the ESCs have been mounted, I am going to do the motors next. And I just want to check here. Yes, I do believe this is a slightly larger. There we go. The motor mount screws. Obviously, when you do motor mounts, etc., do use a thread locker. it is the way to go. Now obviously the first thing I'm going to do is just get the motors on, and that's simply a process of popping the 4 screws. There is a way of mounting these. You'll see that they are slightly off-centered. So 2 of the screws are a little further apart and the other 2 are a little closer, and you just have to match that up with your mounting, and there you go. And then whammo, you just tie it down. And yes, I'm just going to check the orientation on each, and I am going to screw them down. So let me do that quickly, and when I have screwed down all the, or mounted all the motors, I will show you what it looks like. Okay, we now have our motors mounted, and we are ready to proceed to the next step. Mounting the motors is actually quite simple. You just pop them in there, turn down the screws, and make sure they are tightened to approximately the same strength on each one of the motors. And well, there you go. Simple task. The next thing is to get the power leads soldered up to the power leads from the ESCs. And I'm going to be doing that next, and I'll show you what that looks like once I'm done. The motors are now all wired up. I cable tied them down after doing the wiring, the soldering, and some heat shrink, just to keep the whole thing neat. That's what each arm will look like. And I did them all the same so that it's neat. And if you don't have any loose wires hanging around all over the place, your airflow is just so much better around this thing. So try and keep everything a little neater, and that way airflow and things will just be a little more predictable, and it looks decent. Now yeah, at the center there's still a bit of a crow's nest because I'm not quite finished with that yet, but as I finish up little things, I do tend to tidy it up so that the end product does look good. Alright guys, I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup, and from here our next step is going to be to plug in the ESCs back onto the outputs of the controller. I have now plugged in these motors, I've plugged in the ESCs, the signal wires, and interestingly, one would normally assume that the black wire is going to be ground and the white wire will be signal. But it seems that on the CX20 they have this the wrong way around. Now I have actually marked this, and if I can get this to focus, you can actually see there I have marked them top right, bottom left, top left, bottom right. That way I know which needs to go on which side. The black wires are seems to be your signal wires, which on the top, and the red wires I've snipped off very short because we just don't use them, and the white wires at the bottom. But anyway, there we go. That's how you connect them. It is a top right, then bottom left, then it is top left, and then bottom right, and that is pretty much that. There we have our final product. Everything cabled down, and I think it's looking pretty neat. One receiver at the back, one receiver antenna at the front. So yes, there we go. It's all tied down pretty neatly. Now some of you may wonder why I stuck this black tape over my flight controller. Well, there's a lot of people that say that the flight controller doesn't like light, and for that reason, and with that group, I am following that methodology, and I've just given it some darkness by covering it in some dark insulation tape. Well, there we go. That is what the CX20's innards look like on a 330 frame. Now that everything is cleaned up and theoretically working, let's bring a battery. This is one of the very original CX20 batteries that I have, the 2700 milliamp 3S batteries, and I'm just going to connect it up and let's see if she works. There we go. There we go. Recognized. I don't have any props on. I do have the transmitter here. Let's switch on the transmitter. Okay, I'm just going to turn it this way. Now you can see the light there, the LED, which indicates arm, disarm. I'm going to try and arm. She arms, and there we go. This motor should be spinning counterclockwise, which is correct. This one clockwise, this one counterclockwise, that's correct. And this one clockwise. There we go. We are ready to fly pretty much. And there you go, guys. That is it. All I need to do now is add props and we can fly. This is an old set of props, but it's purely for testing. But I have fitted them, and if it flies, it flies. But that'll be in the next video. Guys, let's go see if this one flies.